to Face the Nation. I'm John Dickerson. There was more violence and protest this weekend on the campaign trail. Outside Phoenix, Arizona, protesters blockaded the road leading to a Trump rally for several hours. 3 were arrested. Later, in Tucson, a man who was with a woman wearing a KKK hood was punched in the face by a Trump supporter. And about 1,000 anti-Trump protesters in New York City marched from Central Park to Trump Tower. All of this activity is picked up as Donald Trump seems headed towards his party's nomination. Trying to stop that in a more peaceful way is Governor John Kasich of Ohio. We spoke with him earlier. Governor, in order for you to get the nomination, you would have to win more than 100% of the remaining delegates. So how are you going to do it?
Well, first of all, nobody's going to have the delegates they need going to the convention. Everyone will fall short. And the convention, by the way, is an extension of the political process. So what will happen is people will go there with a certain number of delegates. We will go into Cleveland with momentum. And then the delegates are going to consider 2 things. Number 1, who can win in the fall? And I'm the only one that can. That's what the polls indicate. And number 2, John, a really crazy consideration, like who could actually be president of the United States. And I think when they take a look at my record, both in Washington and in Ohio, with the job growth, the wage growth, reforming the Pentagon, and they can understand that I have the crossover appeal, I think I will be picked. So I don't think anybody's going to get there with the delegates that they need to win.
Why shouldn't the person who goes into the convention, if they don't have the majority of delegates, but if they're well ahead, why shouldn't they get the nomination?
You know what? It's like one of my daughters said, well, I had an 86 and my other friends had less than that, so I should get an A. So we got rules, sweetie. You got to make a 90 to get an A. In other words, we've got rules as to how many delegates you ought to get. And if you go in way ahead, you're likely to be picked. But what's interesting is in the 10 contested Republican conventions, you know that the leader going in only got picked 3 times? And again, John, I have to tell you that who's going to win in the fall? Who's going to beat Hillary? These other folks can't win. They can't win Ohio. I can tell you that. But in addition, look at the resume. Look at the record. Who actually can fix this country? Who can get us moving again, both domestically and with foreign policy? So that should be a consideration now. It's not much of one, to be honest with you. But when we get to a convention, see, because I was there when Ronald Reagan actually challenged Gerald Ford. Can you imagine how many people were mad at Reagan? But his message mattered. He came close. He ultimately became one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. So, the convention is a very interesting thing, and delegates take things extremely seriously. Let me also tell you, John, if somebody can get the numbers, they would win. They're not going to get the numbers. Let's just everybody chill out.
Some people have suggested you should drop out so somebody can get the numbers because Ted Cruz is closer to that number than you are.
He needs 80% of the votes in order of the vote to get it. That's not going to happen, John. You know it, and I know it.
Has anyone asked you to drop out, though?
Nobody is calling me directly and asking me to drop out. And by the way, why don't they drop out? Wait a minute, John. Why don't they drop out? I'm the one that can win in the fall. You know, another interesting thing, this party has run around for 7 years saying, how is it that we elected a 1-term United States senator to be president who's never had the experience? Whatever happened to that? Remember that? So here's what I would say. I can win in the fall. They cannot.
You say you're delivering a positive message. You've stayed away from some of the back and forth. Would you not, in the pursuit of your nomination, not want the help of the Stop Trump forces, the organized efforts to stop Donald Trump?
You know, John, I am not in this for some political science game or some calculation. Let me just tell you that people are nervous about their work, their wages, their kids' future. That's what I focus on, responding to that legitimate concern that they have. And I tell them exactly how in Washington we had great success and balanced the budget and grew jobs. And I tell them about the 417,000 people who are now working in Ohio who didn't have a job when I became governor. I have people that come to my rallies and thank me for the fact that I have focused on the issue of mental illness and drug addiction. I don't have time to sit around thinking about this anti-Trump group or that group. Let me just do my job, okay? Let me just continue to communicate to the public And we'll see where it all ends up. But I think this is a very, very constructive message to the American people, because I want you, the American people, you in your living rooms, to believe that you can change the world. And we need you to do it, because you'll revive the spirit of our country.
But, Governor, the people who are trying to stop Donald Trump believe that many of the things you've just described are imperiled by his candidacy, and that gets them a little exercised in the same way you're exercised. So I'm just wondering whether you think that they're wrong, they're crazy, they've missed something?
No, let them go and do. Look, you know what's interesting? Some of those very same people wanted me to get out of the race, and they wanted to get behind Rubio. What happened? Rubio's out, I'm in. Okay? If I don't win Ohio, guess what? Trump's the nominee. I want to win Ohio. Now they want me to get out? What do you... Listen, these are the same establishment people that have been fighting me my entire political career. And you know what? I'll tell you what's in my mind's eye. The people I grew up with in McKees Rocks, the people that walked door to door for me. We had people from 22 states manning phone banks in Ohio. They came from all over the country to help because they're hopeful that together we can raise this country. I don't have time to think about all this political calculation in some back room somewhere. Okay, John? I'm just not doing it. You've known me long enough to know that what you see with me is what you get. Period. End of story.
But you have, in fact, brought on people to help you with the calculation, people with experience in previous contested. So you are, in fact, thinking about the calculation. You just don't want to talk
John,
about it.
look, wait a minute. First of all, the convention is an extension of this process. Of course I want Stu Spencer. Of course I want Charlie Black. Of course I want Vin Weber. Of course I want Tom Ridge. I mean, of course I want the former governor of Utah. I want them all to help me. I know. What do we think? The convention is some sort of subterfuge? It's nothing more than an extension of what we're doing now. And if nobody gets the delegates, which they won't, then we'll have to work. We'll have to work at the convention. And I will spend my time convincing them about my electability and my record. And if they buy it, great. If they don't, I will have done my best. John, I'm perfectly comfortable with this.
Let me ask you a presidential question about Merrick Garland, put forward by the president for the Supreme Court. This could be a decision you have to handle. What's your feeling about the way that your Republican colleagues have responded to that nomination from the president?
Well, look, I never thought the president should send it because I knew nothing was going to happen. I mean, frankly, they probably ought to all sit down and meet with the guy. And my feeling is at the end of the day, whoever gets elected president should be in a position to be able to pick, who they want. And the American people will decide by either voting for a Republican or Democrat what the makeup of the court is. I just think that's a process that can unite us, rather than a process that right now continues to divide us. As
someone who's talked about unity, would you take a look at Mr. Garland and if you were elected president?
Well, he received, overwhelming support, I think, even from Senator Hatch. So, of course, we'd think about it. The way we do it, John, is we look at a person's record. I want a conservative who's not going to make the law, but who will interpret the law, and somebody of high standing. I don't care about their peccadillos, 30 years ago. But, yeah, we have a process. I've appointed over 100 judges in Ohio, including a woman that, fortunately, I was able to appoint to the Ohio Supreme Court, and we've had good success with our selections.
All right, Governor John Kasich of Ohio, thanks so much for being with us.